Hi, everybody. I'm Zilla Blitz, and welcome. Today we have a special episode, an interview with Artur Zanón, the CEO of Do It Games, specifically to talk about two new releases they have coming to Kickstarter on February 28th. Downfall of Empires, a strategic game about World War I, and Downfall of the Third Reich, a strategic game about World War II. Now, this is a long and winding interview. We cover a lot of topics, including a demonstration of the game through VASSAL. So if there's a particular part of the interview you're interested in, you can use the chapter navigation down below to select it. With that being said, let's get started. I want to welcome today. I'm so happy to have our guest today, who is Artur Zanón from Do It Games. And we're going to specifically talk today about two new games coming out from Do It Games, which is Downfall of Empires and Downfall of the Third Reich. But for a lot of our viewers in English-speaking nations, they may not know too much yet about your company. So I was wondering if you could start by telling us a little bit about Do It Games and just share a little bit about your company's history and what you guys are doing.
Yes, we are a quite new company because we started in less than 5 years ago. Because we are gamers since we born practically, so a lot of years playing games, and we do like games, historical games, basically, war games, or maybe not war games, but that shows a conflict in the history. Do you follow me? Just not maybe not wargaming, and yes, also wargaming, but we do like games that explains the history. And we decided with my wife, because we are a small company, we're only 4 employees in Barcelona, in Spain, and we decided to go ahead with this, basically because we do lot we do enjoy a lot gaming, and we say, why not? We can work with the things we enjoy, and this happens. 5 years ago, I contacted Columbia Games, a grant from Columbia Games, because I like it a lot, Hammer of the Scots, and we spoke with Columbia, and he says, "Oh, that's nice. Why not have a partner in Spain?" And we go ahead with this because we wanted to go step by step, so not produce at the beginning lots of games. So we started with Columbia, and the things run correctly. So we produce the game, we sell, and we say, okay, so the first game has been working fine, so why not continue? And we are not partners of a lot of companies. Most of them are from US and UK, and we are partners like GMT in Spain. We started collaboration last year. We are going to publish Command and Colors Napoleonics and Caesar, this is the Simonich game, and also Dominant Species, the Spanish version. And we are partners of Osprey Games. You know Osprey Games.
The Undaunted series?
Exactly.
Yes.
We print Undaunted for Spain, and now we are working with the last release, which is Stalingrad. It's not yet on the market, but we are working with Osprey. So we are doing a lot of things because we do like games, and we enjoy a lot our work. It's a pleasure to work in this market.
Great, thank you. Yes, and now, so I'm very excited to hear more about Downfall of Empires and
Yep.
Downfall of the Third Reich, which are kind of two brothers, maybe, if you would, in terms of styles of play, but yet very different. So I was wondering if
Yep.
you could talk a little bit about both of these games and how
Sure.
excited you are for those.
Yes, the thing is that I didn't know the games because I have to say that Downfall of Empires was published by the designer himself. So I mean, there's no publisher behind. He did a small production. He only printed 100 games, but I didn't know that game. And because I go in Spain, I go to channels to speak and to promote my games, and several channels ask me, why you don't try this game? Because the game was sold out in few days, And I think Spain needs a bigger production of Downfall of Empires. So I contacted Victor. We are almost neighbors in Barcelona. We didn't know that, and we we share. He is member of Alfares, which is a wargamer club in Barcelona of about 200 members. I went there. I met Victor, and they showed me the game. I like it very much, and they said, "Stop, stop! I will show you a second one, which I am working with." And he showed me Downfall of the Reich. I was really fall in love with Downfall of the Reich because of several things. Maybe we can speak later. But after speaking with Victor, I think the same day we signed the contract and we start working in both games. So it was like first sign love. You say that first.
Yep. Love at
First
first
sign love.
sight.
Okay, love at
Yep.
first
Love
sight.
at first sight. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, we did like it a lot. Both games, and uh, this is how we started with Downfall. Why we decided to go ahead with this project? Basically, because I realized that both games are really very easy to learn, and it can be played in one sitting.
Hmm.
It's correct, one sitting. So
Yes.
you can okay. So you start, and you don't have to keep the game on the table for more than one day. So you start after having lunch, and before having dinner, you are already finished. So this impressed me because simple rules, easy to play, and the third thing which I do like it very much is that a multiplayer game. So the game works perfectly from 2 to 4 or from 2 to 3 in the second game in Downfall of the Right. So these three characteristics, features of the game are the ones that we of course the mechanics are nice, and we decided to go ahead with this. This is more or less a little story uh, of how we decided to print the game.
So
And
you talked a little bit about the number of players. And
yeah,
for Downfall of the Third Reich, I've read through the rules for Downfall of the Third Reich. So if it's 3 player, it's going to be the Axis forces is 1 player, and then USSR and allies would be the second and third player. If it's 2 players, the second player would control the allies in the USSR. What about for Downfall of Empires? How does the 3 player and the 4 player game work for that?
yeah, it works differently because, as you said, in Downfall of the Right, there are two sides. Okay, so if one side wins, the other side loses, obviously. So one side it's allies and USSR, and but they win together. Okay, in the first one, in the First World War game, it works completely different. So there are two sides. So one side, as you may know, it's German plus Austro-Hungarian. They go together, and the other side are Russia and allies, so France and England, basically. But only one player wins. That
Ah,
means that if you are if you go with I don't know, with allies, and I am the Russian, I want to be your friend, but maybe not too much in some circumstances.
right.
So, for instance, in the Germans lend armies to Austro-Hungarians because if not, Austro-Hungarians it's so difficult to survive. Okay, so Germans must do that. They have to do that. But um, if they do so much, probably the Austro-Hungarians can beat the Germans at the end of the game because the winner it's the player who scores more points at the end of the game. And every time Austro-Hungarians scores 1 point, Germans also scores 1 point, but not vice versa. So every time the Germans scores 1 point, Austro-Hungarians don't score anything. So this brings nice situations between players, diplomacy over the diplomacy of the game. So in the game there are diplomacy of sides and countries, but over there are the diplomacy between players. Do you follow me?
Yes.
So there are diplomacy of countries, and another step, another is between players. So that makes the game very nice, fun to play, easy to play, but important, it's very difficult to master.
Mm.
So those games, the challenge of the designer when they start to design the games is that those have to be a games that experienced wargamers like to play. So first thing to do, I am is what the designer thought, is that have to be different to master. And once you start the game, every game is different. So I will tell you what happened in BellotaCon, which is a convention that 1 month ago in Spain, in the south of Spain. We assist to that convention, and uh, after the first game of Downfall of Third Reich, the players keep maybe 2 hours thinking how to conquer France. So, which is the best option? How the armies have to be moved? How the armies have to attack? Which technology have to be developed at the beginning of the game, just to get the best way to conquer France? Normally, France falls in 2 turns, 1, 2, or 3 turns, depending on the players. So imagine that a game that have 22 turns, only the action that you do in 1 or 2 turns makes the players discuss and express how they would do that maybe 2 hours. So I think it's very exciting. Once you play the game, these things happen. So um, I other games, are more complex, obviously, because they reflect more exactly what happened. But what Victor says is, okay, sometimes less is more. So for you don't have to do a lot of exceptions, because sometimes players uh, don't want to be um, mastered by exceptions. They want to have fun. And the what is good in the game, that you can reproduce, you can follow the history with very very few rules and very very few exceptions. I don't know if you understand the picture
Absolutely.
of the
Yes.
game.
Yes. Yes. No, that's great. Thank you very much. And maybe I'd
Welcome.
like to follow up a little bit on that. There's a number of people who watch the channel that are experienced wargamers, and there's a number of people who watch the videos on our channel who may have never played a war game before. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you could maybe talk to. Let's start out with the someone who's never played a war game. Would one of these games, or would both of these games, be a good place for that person to start? And maybe a little bit about what you know about how a newcomer to wargaming, because I think a lot of times what we talk about, what are called gateway games. Someone's curious about wargaming, but they look at the game and they say,
Yep.
that's too complex for me. I won't understand it. So I'm kind of curious if you could say a little bit more. You've talked a little bit about it, but could you say a little bit more about how someone who's never played a war game might experience these games?
Yeah, this is I wouldn't say that this is only for an experienced player, because that's not true. But if somebody haven't played any war game, this can be a very good option. Basically, because as you said, many people don't want to bring to come in to start playing war games, because they feel, oof, this would be 1 week playing every day, or maybe I have to learn rules for 5 hours, and then when I start playing, I forget the rules, so I have to take my rule book just next to me, and every action I have to do, I have to see if I do correct. So that you have to forget this in this game. I did a gameplay in our channel. So if somebody wants to see that video, you will see that the 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 actions that every player can do in every turn are very reduced. So there are only six kind of actions, but you can only choose two of them. So there is no complex, and actions are very, what I say, it's atomic. So maybe one action you spend only 3 seconds to do that. Or maybe when you attack, maybe obviously you spend a little bit more, but actions are very short in time. That makes that the player who is waiting for your turn don't have to wait so much and don't get bored. So because actions are very quick,
Mm.
and this is maybe the key of the game and the key to let people from outside this world to join us and to say, don't be afraid, just try, and after that you will tell me.
Great,
So
fantastic. Yeah.
it's a good way just to get to this kind of games. Obviously, because rules, time, multiplayer are three features that for me are very important. And also the most important thing, it's a funny game. So obviously, uh, every war game is funny, but these kind of games are mm, well. If you play one day, you will tell me.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then, so let's talk a little bit about the other side of that equation.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned a little bit about players discussing kind of the subtle strategies of attacking France. But say I'm an
Yeah.
experienced wargamer who's played a lot of war games before,
Mhm.
and I look at this and I say, oh, that's too simple. It's
Okay.
just how would you answer that question? Like, what's in this particularly for an experienced wargamer who has a lot of depth and complexity in war games? Why would they enjoy these games?
Because the key is that they are very difficult to master. A game, it's like a tree of decisions that, like the chess, it's a tree, no? Because you play one, you do one, you play one turn, and then depending on this turn, the other can do several things, and depending on what your opponent have done, you can do uh, different things. So um, the downfall series give you lots of different ways to play. So, for example, if you are German, let's speak about the Second World War, just to make you an example, to give you an example. If you are German, you can do maybe what you normally will do, it's Barbarossa, okay? But you can say, okay, I can wait Russians to attack me. You are not forced to do Barbarossa. Normally, you will do that, but I have seen um, games where the German wins the game without doing that.
Mm,
Okay, and you can say, okay, I will do Sea Lion. That means I would like to attack England. You can disembark on London, and you can get London. You can conquer London. It's difficult, but you can do. And on that convention, it's very funny because maybe half of the games try to conquer London, which is, it's a what if, but that didn't happen to conquer London, and they achieved that on that convention with these things I mentioned, that you you don't have to follow the history. The designer always say one sentence that I realize that it's true. The designer says, okay, the game, if you do what happened in history, you probably will do well. But the game don't
mm,
force to do that. So if you do other things that didn't happen, you can win maybe in a better way depending on your opponent. So the tree of decisions is really huge. So let me give you another example. The mines in Norway are very the Germans go to Norway to conquer Norway because it's a good place to go and to conquer. So normally Germans will do that in the game, but you are not forced to do that. Maybe if you do a sea lion or you start Barbarossa in very early 1941, you can done as Russia to surrender. You can do that. So there are lots of options, like Africa Corps. Rommel in North Africa. The Germans can say, okay, I will. I am not go for Africa, or just put few armies, but not go as Rommel did in reality in the history. So this makes the game really a lot of this, a tree with a lot of decisions, and which make maybe the gamers who really like war games will enjoy that. I am 100. But best thing that people who can listening to me, it's to try. We have the models in VASSAL open for everybody, and also the designer are happy to show the game. And because the designer have made maybe, I don't know, 300 games, and it's very difficult to beat him, and very difficult. But in when we play in conventions, they his role is like a teacher, okay? And so the the students start the game, and the teacher say, okay, you do this, but seeing the situation, it's better to do this other thing.
Mm,
It's up to you, but I give you this suggestion. And this really makes it's a very rich way to introduce the game.
yeah.
So I would say that it suits very well for. In fact, the game was developed in Alfares in Barcelona. This is a Wargamers club. So,
Well, I
so
think one of the things I've been talking to a number of people
yeah,
about how popular wargaming in general has become in Spain. And when I look on Twitter, a lot of the tweets about
uh,
wargaming are, of course, English. But then I see so many tweets in Spanish
yeah,
about wargaming clubs and stuff. So it seems like the hobby is growing quite rapidly in Spain.
yeah. The thing is that the problem we have in Spain is that we have the sun, and people go ahead or go outside and go for a walk. So if the weather was bad weather, people would play more. But even that, people play
Right, right.
play war games. In Barcelona, in Madrid, there is at least two or three war gamers club with maybe 100. In Barcelona, I have two or more war gamers club, and we are starting now. But it's difficult because some people have no good idea of people who play war games. I don't know
Mm.
why, but I don't know
It's the
if
same
this
here, I
happened.
think, too.
It's the
Yeah.
same here.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
for
say,
sure.
oh,
Yeah.
you like to play military, and you are not. It's just people see this like a strange thing, and it's not.
Right.
All kind
And
of
that's
people.
where to be honest, that's where I think like Downfall of Empires and Downfall of the Third Reich, I'm really excited about those because I have a lot of friends who are in that same type of category, who they might
Yeah,
like games, but they look at war games and they say,
yeah,
that's too complicated. I don't get what the pleasure is
yeah,
there. And so I'm really excited to introduce these games to them because as I was reading the rules, I was like, what's the sequence of play? And I was thinking, I kept reading, where's the sequence of, I don't see a sequence of play. And then I realized, no, there really isn't one. You can do your actions in these games, at least in Downfall and the Third Reich, in kind of any order, and then you're going to do the combat and move on. And I realized, no, this is much simpler than I thought. You're really free. If you have a strategy, you don't have to spend a long time reading the rules to figure out how to do it. You're like, okay, I can use this movement to move these here, and I'm going to spend my actions in Russia this turn, and so I'm going to concentrate here. And so it really feels like there was I could see myself teaching that, and I watched. I think it might have been your video or someone's video. There's an English tutorial video on that, and we can talk a little bit about this. We'll look at the game in a moment, but there's an English tutorial video where I was like, oh, this is very simple. It's easy. I could see myself, showing that video or explaining the game to some friends. And so I think there's a lot of friends that I have that are very interested in historical games, but the complexity, it kind of turns them off. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how these are going to work as gateway games with some of the friends that I know. So
Exactly.
yeah.
You described very well. People are afraid, and one feature of the game is that you can do two actions, but in any order. So no
Yes.
reason to follow blah. So step one, step two. Many war games say, okay, reinforcements step, combat, resolution, attrition. No, this doesn't happen. Doesn't happen
Right.
here.
And that was the
Yeah.
part that was confusing me at first because I was looking for that. I was like, where's the sequence of play? I don't get it. What
Yeah.
order do you do this? And then I realized I read the part, you can do these in any order. It's like, oh, and then I watched the video. I was like, oh, okay. So it's very free. It's like you can think of something, you can do it right away. Yeah. And maybe this would be a good time to take a look at the game too. Shall we jump in now and take a little bit? Because I'd like to ask you about how combat works in the game, and maybe you can kind of walk through that a little bit.
Yeah.
So shall we take a look at your screen now, and then we can start with that? In now. So let's take a look now at, would you like to explain combat? Would that be a good place to start?
Yes, it's perfect.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Yep.
We will do Guns of August.
Okay, great. And now, just to help people, we are looking at, this is Downfall of Empires, correct?
Exactly.
Yes.
You can see that Downfall of Empires, there are not different kind of armies. Every army is infantry. So in the other game, there are armors, okay? So here it's more easy. So I will show you how combat works. First, I would like to show you is that you will see that many games are point to point, and when you win the combat, the defender normally retreats if they lose the combat. Okay, here we don't do in this way. You see that there is an area, a big area. Okay, so it is supposed that in a big area like this, they can be, let's say, two armies, okay? And maybe one army is in the north and not involved in the battle, and the second army is in the south and is involved in the battle. This is very important because the Downfall series, all of them work like this, okay? Let's say let's say that it's the German turn, and the Germans in this game they have three actions. One action is to activate armies, and when they activate armies, they can activate three of them. So let's say I activate this army and move, this army and move, and this army and move. Obviously, you have to move to adjacent places, okay? And each army have a movement points of 4. So that means that one army here can move 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. Okay. Oops, sorry. So, but when they come to an uncontrolled area, they spend 2 movement points. Okay. So let's say that one army it's moving from here. Well, this is not possible because you are engaged in combat. But if one army goes from control to uncontrol, they move 2 movement points. And last thing is that to attack, you have to be adjacent. So a German army cannot move from here and attack because to attack, you must be next to the place you are attacking to. Okay.
So to attack, you have to start adjacent in that turn.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Got
exactly. So let's see how this battle works. So first, the German decides how many armies they would like to attack. In that case, the German says, okay, there are 2, but I will only attack to one army. Let's say this one, okay? The other is not attack. So how many armies do I have? I have 3 armies. How many defenders? Only 2. That means that I have one leftover army because I have one more than the enemy. So the leftover army can support the main attack. So how many combat factors the Germans will have? It's 5. This is the main attacker, and this supports. Okay, and because it's supporting, they only add +2. That's 5 plus 2, 7. See that this army is not attacking but cannot support because it's supposed to be engaged with this one. Okay, imagine that there were only one French army here. So in that case, German armies can support the attack. That would be 5 plus 2 plus 2. If this was flip, okay, the main attacker would be 3 and the supporting only +1. Okay.
And
Well,
just to explain for people that might be new to it, the flipped means that's it's been reduced by some combat before, or it's not a full strength army, right?
Exactly. Let's do this attack. So that will be 5 plus 2, 7. Okay. 7 against 4. Defender can not support never, only the country who is attacking. Okay. So that would be 5 plus 2, 7 against 4. And let's say that the Germans previously have developed one technology. I will show you. Oh yeah, I cannot. Well, I will show you. Imagine that this is a French one, but never mind. Okay, imagine that the Germans have developed the aviation. Okay, in that case, this is not the case because this is allies. Okay, but because I have not access to the German because
Right.
I am playing. Okay,
No,
so
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
okay, and has spent before has accumulated 3 missions. So what we can do is say, okay, I will spend 1 mission of aviation to increase here +2 the combat. That would be 5 plus 2 for the aviation. So that's 9. 9 against 4. This is final the final numbers before rolling the die. So every player roll 1 die. So let's say the German rolls a 2. That means that 9 plus 2 is 11, and the French roll 4. That's 4 plus 4, 8. That's 11 versus 8. Germans win. That means that the attack army are eliminated, return to pool. And because the Germans have not double, because I think it was 11 against 8. That means that has not been double. So the main attacker suffers lose 1 step.
Okay, so and by double you mean the 11 isn't twice as much as the 8. So if it were 16 to 8, it would be double, and the Germans would have no losses.
Exactly.
Right.
This is the way. See, it's very important that this army have not to be retired. So have not to be disappear from here. This army is not involved in the battle. So this keeps like this, okay? And now it's will be the allies' turn. See that the German have not conquered this area, okay? Because to conquer an area, and the Germans have to be alone. Let's say it's the German turn again, okay? Just to show you how it works. Now it's next turn. Allies have not done anything or have done other things, and now it's the German turn again. So the German turn can attack again here, and if they win the attack, this will be eliminated, and now the Germans conquer this place because they are alone at the end of the turn. This is how combat works in both games. So you see that you don't have to do any complex mathematical operation. It's only to add the combat factor of the armies and roll one dice. And as simple as the loser loses one army and the winner loses one step. And those one step if he done doubles. Imagine now that the French have one trench here, okay? In the previous example. If the French had one trench here, this gives the French +2 in the dice. So that will be a defense of 4 plus 2 plus the dice. So in this conflict, strength to get the trench is very important. Sometimes you don't have to go farther. You have to stay quiet, don't conquer, but assure your position, because if not, you can be weak. I don't know if you follow me because my English is not quite
Your
good.
English is great. It makes total sense. And I think just to kind of build off that, what you talked about earlier when you're talking about some of the strategies and different ways to play, I imagine building a trench then in Downfall of Empires is an action you can take, and you have
Exactly.
limited actions. So you're always
Exactly.
deciding, do I move reinforcements up? Do I try to build a trench here? Where do I build a
Exactly.
trench? Because you've got limited actions. You can only do so many things. You have to be very careful with how you spend your actions each turn to make sure that
Exactly.
you're spending them in the right place, if you would.
Exactly. It's the kind of game that you will do a lot of things, but because all the things are nice to do it, but you can only do two of them. Imagine that to put one trench here, it's one action. Okay. Allies only have three actions. Imagine that put one trench here is one action, put one trench here is the second action, and reinforcements is the third action. I'm just giving you an example.
Mm.
Okay. So that means that you have to think a little bit because you have to choose the correct action each time, and every mistake is paid. In Spanish,
Yes.
in Spanish we say that. Okay, every mistake is paid later on.
Yes.
So
We say the same thing in English. Yep. You pay for your
okay,
mistakes. Yep.
good.
Yes.
And
Yep.
imagine that you are um, uh, Austro-Hungarian. You only have two actions, okay, which is quite a few. And you have from one side Russians trying to conquer you. Once Italian at war joins the war, you have another uh, front. I don't say in English.
Front.
Another
Yes.
front. Yes,
Yep.
another front here. So you have a lot of problems, but you only have two actions. So the player suffer and suffer a lot with this game. You know, Paths of Glory that I do like very much Paths of Glory. So you know
Yes.
when you have the Italy card in your hand, and the Italy card give you 5 points of activation, which is quite nice. But you have the event that Italy can join the war, and you only have to decide with this dilemma what they have to do: 5 points or Italy join the war. This kind of dilemma happen in this game. Okay, another action, if you allow me, I will explain.
Absolutely.
Another
Yes.
action, more or less, I explain you the whole game.
That's
So
fine. Yep.
another thing you can do is to diplomacy with the minor countries.
And
So
that's
imagine
actually
that.
one thing I wanted to ask you about too, not to interrupt, but I was curious about the diplomacy because it seems like there's a number of diplomatic options too, and you could
Yep.
spend your actions there. So I'm excited that you want to talk about this. So this would be great. Yeah.
Okay, just get the chance to have the map in front of us. It's easy, very easy.
Yes.
You have imagine that I am German. I have only three actions. I did an attack, one action. I built a trench, second action. Now I have my third action. And this action I have to make Turkey. Normally, at the beginning of the game, it's good to increase the Turkey diplomacy track, because when I do this action, I increase that marker 2 spaces. Okay? Once this marker reaches the end, Turkey joins the war. Okay? So there is another front. the Caucasus, and the Turkey, and also the Egypt front, Syria and Egypt front. So making an action like this and getting the end of the track, it the game give me two things. One is that the armies of Turkey are joins with me, so I can move the Turkish army. And second thing, that I earn one victory point, because reaching this give me 1 point. Okay, so in that case, the Germans will score 1 point, and his friend also will score 1 point because Turkey have joined the war. How points, apart from diplomacy, every time I conquer one city, I will win 1 point, and obviously the side who loses that city will lose 1 point. At the end of the game, the side, or not the side, the country with more points is the winner. So I explain you 90% of the game,
And so,
Mike.
and could I ask a couple questions too then about
Sure.
winning, because that made me think of a couple of things here. And you talked a little bit earlier about how, like sometimes in Downfall of Third Reich, the German forces can perform Operation Sea Lion, and they can conquer England. They can take out London, and they can capture London. And is it correct that so at the end of the war, and I'm that because the games are called Downfall, I'm thinking, does like the Axis forces always lose? But if they lose, could they still win the game because they have more victory points? Or how does that work?
Exactly. In Downfall of the Reich, exactly what you have explained. So the Germans only have to resist and not have to not surrender in at the end of the turn. So uh, this is the Germans don't have to conquer everything, only not surrender. It's I'm speaking of the other game, the Downfall of the Reich.
Right.
Uh, the victory conditions are totally different. In Downfall of the Reich, the German have four supply sources, okay, and if the USSR and the Allies conquer all four supply sources, the German surrenders. If at the end of the game, 22 turns, the German keeps only one of them, the Germans win the game. This not happens here. This At the end of the game, the player with more points is the winner. You see totally different
Very different.
victory
Right.
conditions. Okay, and see the starting positions is German start with +3. Okay, so it's very asymmetric, and Russians start with +5. That means that uh, the Russians don't lose too much cities, they win the game. Obviously, this normally doesn't happen because, as you may see, the Russians force is 3 versus 5 of the German. Okay, this is important. And also, the Russians only have 2 actions, and the German have 3 during the game. So that makes a very asymmetrical uh, country. So countries are completely different. So more or less, if you allow me, I will explain. I think the last action I have not explained it is the diplomacy. Diplomacy. Each country have several tiles of diplomacy. Okay, and each tile give you an advantage. For example, if I develop the aviation, which I showed you before, this one, if I develop this technology, can use, I can spend one mission to add 2 to the dice. Remember we did before,
You did
okay?
in the attack, right? Yes. Yep. Guns of
E-
August. Yeah.
e- Exactly. Another, for example, I will explain maneuver. That means that when you do the activation action, you can only activate 3 armies to attack or to move or whatever. But with this technology, you can activate up to 4. That means that you spend 2 actions, because to develop completely a technology, you have to spend 2 actions, okay? But this is like an investment. So that means that you, during two actions, you will do nothing in the map, but to develop the technology. But later on, every time you do the activation action, you can move up to 4 armies. So this is what the dilemma that the players have. Do I have to develop this during 2 turns, or maybe I have to attack? So this is what makes things the players, and this is what is really nice to have, uh, to only have few actions, but you have to choose very carefully.
And that's what I was as I was looking at the games. One of the things that's right. So these developments are kind of how the technology and the thinking changes over the course of the war. And like you mentioned, there's only so many actions. So your choices are, and I could see one of the thoughts I had, and maybe you can speak to this too, is like, you know, is this the type of game you play once or twice, and then you say, I've tried everything, I've seen everything. But it seems like there's so many different ways you go, because you not
Exactly.
only do you have your strategic choices of where and how you're going to act. I mean, you could play a game where you develop tanks in this one or develop maneuvering. And then you say, well, okay, I want to try to do this strategic move, but instead I'm going to use this maneuver tactic. I'm going to develop this and see how it works with that. So there's a lot of different ways you can
Exactly.
blend your tactics and your strategies and where you're taking actions with this development mechanism that's going to change the technology every time you play.
Exactly. You can say, okay, I'll go. I will go for France as a German. Okay, or no, I will go for Russia. Or you can say, okay, I will help a lot Austro-Hungarian. Okay, or not, I will leave Austro-Hungarian alone to see what to see what happened. No, so this kind of decisions, those are strategical decisions, not tactical. Okay, strategical decisions of how the war will be developed, how I will focus the war in the east, in the west, in both. I will join my friend, which is Austro-Hungarian. I will go for the France. I will develop this technology or this other one. So there are lots of decisions, but you have to choose few of them. And this, every game is completely different.
And can I ask you a question that's related to that?
Sure.
I've been thinking of as you've been talking about this. You've talked about some of the strategies as the Axis player or the German player. How does that play out if you are the Allied player or the Russian player? Like, what kind of strategic and development decisions do those players? Because I imagine those aren't in the beginning. They're probably very defensive, right? And Russia is very defensive in Downfall of Empires. So, what kind of fun decisions do those players have in terms of the game if they're not the German forces, which are deciding where to attack and how to attack and things?
Well, the Germans normally they have to attack at least two cities to in France. Okay, normally if they, this is one of the few exceptions they have in the game. If the Germans conquer Brussels, they have one reinforcements more than if they don't. So normally Germans have to go, from my point of view, to attack France, trench. Once they have positions, they have to trench, and they go for the Russians. Okay, this is what normally players do. And the Russians at the beginning have to, if the Germans forget, the Russians have to be very aggressive to take Königsberg. Okay, um, this is the way the Russians, and Austro-Hungarians. It's difficult because they have enemies everywhere, eh, even more when the Italians joins the war. So there are lots of different things. Maybe the Italians joins the war very the beginning of the game, or maybe they don't join the war, because to join the war, you see Italy in the diplomacy track. Italy have it's the largest track. Okay, so they have to spend many actions to increase this counter. So there are some games that Italy joins the war at the end, or in the middle of the game. So every game is different. Another thing I forget to tell you is that you can, as an action, you can increase this, but on the other side, the Germans can decrease this by one. Okay, so it's increase forward or one backward. This is the way it works. I don't know if
It,
this was your question, Mike.
yes, yeah. I'm trying to think of like the different strategies for the Allies, the different strategies for the Russians, and how can their thinking change, or is it more just reacting to what the Germans do?
Well, the Germans in these games normally takes the initiative. Okay, this is normally, see, if you can see the track, Germans have starts with less victory points. So if the Germans don't take the initiative, they lose because they
Right.
don't conquer everything.
Yeah.
So the game force the Germans to attack in this game, and in obviously the other game as well, because the Germans needs have more actions and more power at the beginning of the game. So the game forces the Germans to attack, and obviously allies at the beginning needs to just say to the Germans, okay, I will trench here. I am waiting you here, but I will not attack you probably,
Mhm.
okay?
Right.
Unless the Germans, that's happened several times, makes mistakes and leave this maybe with no troops. The Allies can try to get here, but not with the intention to conquer Munich, just to create a little problem to the Germans, but not to go farther. So the game tries that to follow what happened in history, but of course players can do other things. Yes, that's the way.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Now, I'd like to ask. Can I ask a follow-up question too? We've talked about the multiplayer, and we know that the games are uh, two players or greater. This is a little bit of a different direction. A number of people who watch the videos on this channel are solitaire players, and they
Yeah.
play games. They like to play the games to explore the history or the challenge of thinking for both sides. Could you speak a little bit about how these games would play as a solitaire experience?
Yes, these games. First thing is that there are very few hidden information. I mean that the only thing that you have hidden is the technology, because technology are developed into steps. So the first step, I would put this hidden, okay, and when I do the second step, I put this here, and when I use that technology, I flip, okay, and I show, okay, I have developed this technology, but till uh, till I haven't developed the technology is hidden. Apart from this, there are no hidden information. So this allows players to, to play with two sides, and because the game um, can, how I can explain, gives you an history. So after you have played, even alone, you can say, "Oh, remember that I take Königsberg, and then the Russian side conquer me, blah 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 blah." Obviously, if you play alone, there is no winner. So, like many GMT games, that players, what they do is that only they carry both sides. So, unfortunately, we have not developed one system to play against the game. Okay. Anyway, I would like to mention that in last convention in Badajoz in Spain 1 month ago, they contact us one company, a big company who make for GMT and other games, and Columbia, who adapt the game for PC to play with computer, and they probably will produce this game for computer to play with uh, IA, so you can play against the machine. But this will be a computer, not on board game, on table
Right.
game.
Right, for sure. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. Yeah. And could I ask, this is again kind of going a question that's been sitting in my head a little bit. And as I look at the game, one of the things that strikes me is just how artistic it is. And it's a very beautiful game. It's a game, I think, that it just makes you want to move things around and explore different strategies. It's a very inviting game. Um, could you speak a little bit? And one thing that it reminded me of, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, is the game Absolute War
Yep.
from GMT Games. And it strikes me visually there seems to be some similarities there. Could you speak a little bit about the design inspiration behind the game, if
Yeah.
and things like that?
Yes. First, we have a very nice graphic designer, which is Jesus Peralta, which is also a designer, and this helps us a lot because they know what we would like to produce more than us, because he's very experienced in it's not it's so it's a gamer, it's a war game designer, so have we haven't had to explain a lot what we would like to to be printed. Okay. And the only thing we discussed a little bit regarding the design, the art, was because we we were not sure to put NATO here, NATO symbol, infantry, it's one cross,
Hmm.
or or put one illustration. At the end, we decided to put one illustration just to because we think that normal wargamers, experienced wargamers, maybe probably don't mind to use this symbology, but with this um, we can take gamers that comes from Euro games or other kind of games just to see that this is a real tank. It's not a symbol. So this is the first we have to decide at the beginning. Apart from that, we try to make the technologies, the art of technologies, to be nice for the eyes. So you see, for example, this technology, each armor production provides 5 armor steps, okay? But you can see 5 armor, so you don't have to read the technology, because nowadays, on these days, sometimes we have to spend more than that Avalon Hill games of the 70s and 80s, which were very, how to explain, very not not very nice sometimes.
Right.
No, and we have to put a little bit more effort on this, because to provide mounted maps and to provide this kind of art, which people do like a lot. And regarding the coincidence of the game of GMT, I think it was from the Russian. I took a look, and maybe the what is coincidence is basically the control and
Ah, right. The control
aviation.
marks. Hmm.
Yeah, control are quite similar, but I think it's 100% coincidence, because this game was developed in maybe 2 years before GMT
Ah,
games.
okay. Right.
Yeah, and well, this is more another thing I would like to say, that in the prototype we show in the convention, the thickness of counters were thicker than usual, and we probably will produce that on the final copies, because people do like a lot to take a thinner counter or to take a thinner technology, and says, is this a prototype? Really, it's better than than a normal game. And we
Right.
said, what do you like? And they say, I don't like the art, and I do like the thickness. And probably we will put this as a strange goal, to put thicker counters. Yeah,
Right.
it's really, yeah.
Nice. And then the plan to, you mentioned these are going to be mounted map boards. I think the production values look like they're going to be very high. And a stretch goal then would be thicker counters. But it's
Yeah.
just but what a beautiful, inviting game. And I know we're now you switched, we're looking at Downfall of the Third Reich, which is here, which is just again visually just so inviting and so exciting to. It just makes you want to play. You know, like it's very
Yeah.
really fun to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe this would be a good time to talk to you about. So if people have watched through this and they're wondering, okay, how can I get these games? Could you speak a little bit? I know the Kickstarter is coming up, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that. So if you're someone in a country other than Spain, or maybe even if you want to address Spain too, how can people get these games? How can people order these games? What can people do to get them to their tables?
Yeah, well, it's very easy. We start Kickstarter next Monday, not next Monday, next 28th of February. So in 10 days time, and we will try to offer we will do a nice offer for those who follows us on Kickstarter, because we need some funds, which is not a big amount. I think it's only 8,000 euros uh, to pr- to uh, to fund the game, and this would be maybe 20 something percent discount on based on the MSRP price. And second option, we are looking for partners in. We have partner in France, Chacos, Chacos, which produce Napoleon. It's a partner we have in France. Will produce the game in France, and we have a Chinese partner, and we are speaking with a Japanese one. So almost we have three partners. But for English language, we will we are looking for distributors in USA after the Kickstarter. So let's see, we are lucky and we can find someone in US.
Great. Thank you. So, and this would be then people can order the game on Kickstarter. Um, if you are in the United States, can you order the game on that Kickstarter, or would you have to wait for
Uh,
the distributor?
Yeah. We have found a fulfillment company, a big fulfillment company based in USA, to fulfill the orders for Canada and United States.
Okay.
So everything is set up, and fortunately we have a nice price, so the shipping cost will be not be very high. I don't know, it's 18 euros or or 15 or something like this.
Right.
I don't have in front of me, but it's not shipping cost will not be high, because we have fulfillment company already in United States. Yes.
And you must be very excited for the Kickstarter then. 10 days to go. And I
Yeah.
think as this video comes live, it might only be a couple of days before the Kickstarter, but you must be very busy and very excited for the games to release.
Yeah, because this is our first Kickstarter, and we don't know how this will work. We have put plenty of illusion on this, and we have a lot of experience producing games in the past, because we by today we have 30 titles published, uh, war games and not war games, any kind of games. So we have experience in producing good games, but we don't have an experience on Kickstarter. So we are very excited to see what happens.
Yes. And so, okay, what I wanted to ask is the Kickstarter is going to start at the end of February here, February 28th, in just a few days. And then when do you have an idea for when the game is going to start shipping?
Yes, I would say November, probably before, but you know, sometimes some unexpected things happen, and we will put in the Kickstarter campaign to deliver to do the shipping on this November.
Excellent. So it's very possible that this is a game people could play before the end of 2022.
Yeah, for New Year's.
For New Year's, right? That's the
Yeah,
goal. Yeah. Well, it's
yeah.
very exciting. Yeah.
I am very. I am not patient as a gamer, and yeah, and I think probably many people are like me, so I don't like to go in a Kickstarter that brings me the game in 2 years, because, well, everybody is different, okay? And I would like to to take the game with me tomorrow, not in 2 years' time.
Right.
But obviously we cannot do that. But we tried at least to do October, November.
Well, I think the thing too that will be reassuring for people is that this isn't the first game that you've produced. You have a lot of experience producing and developing, printing and selling games. So this isn't you're not a new company to producing and
No.
creating games, but this is the first time to do Kickstarter for a game
Yeah.
like this, right? So excellent. And,
But
oh, go ahead. Yes.
no, but I think that everybody's set up because we have the pledge manager, we have the fulfillment company, and also we have, because we have to ship from Spain to the fulfillment company in USA. Everything is set up. We know the cost, and we know everything, and so there cannot be any kind of surprise.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Now, I guess the thing I would offer up is there anything that you feel like you haven't said that you would want people to hear about these games? We've talked a lot about combat development. We've looked at the game. We've talked about what type of game it is, how it might work solitaire, what it offers to beginners and experienced wargamers. Is there anything that you're like, I wish we talked about this, that people should know this?
About the game, I think the best thing is to try the game, because from the beginning, we bet that uh, somebody cannot buy a game without knowing how it works. So we put the rules from the beginning. We put a gameplay in our channel. We put the VASSAL module. So I will suggest people who don't know the game at least to take a quick view of the rules, and uh, even to download the VASSAL module, and to maybe with 2 turns you can see more or less how the game works. And maybe it's not suitable for you. I don't know, because obviously not all the games are suitable for everybody. For example, this game is not suitable for people who want a lot of what if. So if you are looking for a game that the Soviet Union can conquer London, it's not possible in this game. Okay.
Right.
Or if you are looking for one that the USA don't join the war, is not possible. So USA will join the war, and the what if is not like other games that everything is possible. The designer don't like this. This is some people would like this, and other people don't like this. Okay, but in these games, you more or less will follow the history with
Mm.
some variants, okay, but not strange things. So Rommel, you have to send to Africa, because if you send Rommel to Africa, this army it's better than if it's a 7 instead of a 5. So the game follows you a little bit, but you cannot do strange things. So I
Right.
think you get me perfectly.
Yes, yeah, but I think
You
that's
get
one of the
me.
things that appeals to me is that there seems like there's a window of possibility,
Yeah,
but you're not going to
not
see the Soviet Union. Like Spain is a neutral game and is a neutral country. You can't invade Spain. You're those countries,
exactly.
and you're not going to have an opportunity to play minor countries. Or Italy's not going to revolt against the Germans and conquer Berlin. Right?
Exactly.
There's
Exactly.
possibilities like the Axis could capture London. They could
Exactly.
perform sea lion, but that window is a little bit more grounded in reality than some of the and not that those games are bad. I mean, those games can be fun, but this
Yeah,
is a different
exactly.
type of game. This is a game we're recreating
Exactly.
World War II with some possibilities that different things could happen. You know.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, that's a good
Exactly.
point too. And I think one of the things that appeals to me about the games, I was looking at it, I was like, wow, this looks really good. Is the idea that I think with a lot of the grand strategic games, they can either be so simple that they don't capture the feeling of what that conflict was like, or they can be so long that it's going to take 10 or 20 hours to play. The
Yeah.
idea that you could play World War One and
Yeah.
tell this story of World War One that's going to have differences and different focus
Yeah.
on battles and kind of different ways it plays out. Same thing with World War Two, but you can do that in an evening like 3, 4, 5 hours or something like that. To get that
Exactly.
scope and scale and all of those strategic decisions in a game that allows me to do that in a respectable amount of time. That's one of the things that really excites me about it, because I think a lot of times a strategic game like this is a 10, 20, or even longer, 30-hour
Yeah.
investment of time. But the idea that you can try these different strategies, play it 2-player, play it solitaire in an evening, and get this story of the war and all the strategic decisions that went with it, to me is really exciting. I'm like, wow, this is it's just a lot of excitement there. I'm really excited to play it. I can't wait for November. I'm really excited to dig in and play. So
There is one thing I would like to mention is that the rules of one game of both games maybe are 80% the same, okay? And but the feeling is completely different. So in the First World War game, in Downfall of Empires, it gives you the feeling of to be slow, not playing on the map. So you conquer one city and then you trench there, you develop one technology, you resist one attack, and 2 turns later you go for another city. So it's the feeling of really the First World War, that
mm,
there are not big operations like Barbarossa. Okay, so the feeling it's really it follows the history. So everything have to be done at his time. Don't go fast. So entrench, blah blah, go step by step. And the feeling of the other is completely different. The other is the Germans have to be very aggressive at the beginning, have to do Barbarossa, have to get a lot of supply, have to go to Norway. So it's another, and this in very few turns. So there is another feeling completely different. I asked several players, and most of them say they like both games, but few of them say that maybe they prefer one or the other based on their feelings. So the feelings are completely different, Mike. If you get the chance, I hope so, you will see what it's different. It's difficult to understand if you don't play the game, but if one time you play, you will realize it's okay. I understand now, Arthur, what was he was
Well, I think
saying.
one of the sense that I got too is the developments in the game start to get at that. So I saw like there's the Blitzkrieg development in Downfall of the Third Reich allows the Axis forces to move in a way that allows them to move faster through the landscape.
Exactly,
Yeah, and the
exactly,
technologies are very different. The entrenching
exactly.
system in Downfall of Empires is going to create a defensive element that's going to slow things down. And maybe that leads me to one, maybe kind of a last couple questions here. Say if you haven't played a lot of war games, would you recommend one game over the other because it's either easier or a little bit thing, or it would be more of personal interest, like a person, oh, I would like to play World War II, so I should get that game. Oh, I'd really like to play World War One, so I should get that game. Are there any other factors in there, especially if you're new to war games?
I would say that for a newbie, a beginner, maybe I would start with Downfall of Empires. But honestly, if that person likes a lot Second World War, I would go for the second one.
So not
So
not a big difference,
not a big difference,
right?
and maybe the second one it's a little, maybe it takes more hour, okay, and maybe there are 20% of rules like armors, to pocket armies when you do Barbarossa. It's nice to pocket armies. So there are Blitzkrieg, which is a very nice technology that allows the German to pocket Russian armies. Uh, I don't dare to say anything. I don't dare.
Okay.
Maybe empires for a beginner and who doesn't matter the conflict. Maybe empires it's a little bit easier, but being 3 pages of rules, I don't know if the difference is worth,
Right,
honestly.
right. The games seem very inviting. They seem easy to learn. They seem like it doesn't take a long
Yeah,
time. And like you say, and once you've looked at the rules, I mean, you might need to look up a couple things in terms of when the action points change or something like that, or
Yeah,
Rommel's armies to
exactly,
7 if it's in North Africa. But there's not a
exactly.
lot of edge cases that you have to keep
No,
in mind as you're playing. Is one side in the games easier to play than the others? Like, do the Germans win more often than the Allies, or
probably,
is it kind of 50-50? Or
probably Germans. I'm not experienced player, okay, but I would say that in the Second World War game, in Downfall of the Reich, I would say that the Germans, because people told me that, okay, and say Germans is difficult. It say, okay, you have to play with the designer, and you will see. Uh, Maybe the Germans are a little, in games that one side have to take the initiative. Probably this side is hardest to play. So in both games, the Germans have to attack because if don't attack, they lose the game.
Mm,
So probably the Germans in both games probably are the hardest. But
okay.
that doesn't mean that is more difficult to win with the Germans. But if you are experienced, I am not, I will give you the Germans, if
That
you
is,
don't
which is
mind.
good to know, because something I could see people getting like when I
Yeah,
when I get the games, I want to introduce them to people who haven't played before. So that means
yeah,
if I've played the game a couple times, I can take the German side, and
exactly. You
friends
will
can take
see.
the Allied side, and then I can help them a little bit, and it could be a really balanced kind of game too. So that's good to know.
Exactly,
Yeah, great.
exactly.
Well, I don't have anything else to ask. Is there anything else that you want to add? I think we talked about most everything that was on my
Yeah,
list here. I think we've covered a lot of things. I'm trying to think questions that people would have about the games, and I think I've asked those. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
I am so happy because we have been speaking of almost everything. So probably people who have listened to us probably know almost 90% of the game. So as you see, it's very easy to play. Very, very, very easy. Very easy. We will provide a quick reference sheet. Okay, only one page with a summary of everything: how many actions, how many reinforcements, what this technology does, what this technology does. So players can forget the rules and live in one draw, stay there, and only with the quick reference sheet is 100 enough.
That's great. Yeah, I
So
was. That was one thing that I was wondering, because there are places in the rules where, for example, in Downfall of the Third Reich, there was a total war or a limited
yeah,
war kind
yeah,
of thing, and some of the actions
exactly,
change there. If I
exactly.
think there was something, if you captured Trondheim, that
Yeah, yeah,
impacts your
yeah,
actions as a
yeah,
German.
yeah,
If you've
yeah,
lost one of your supply cities, so there were a few cases that happen, that change what you can do by whether you've captured something or lost something, or something's happened in certain
exactly,
political considerations. And so I was thinking, yeah, those would be nice to have on one piece of paper that I could look at, or one card I could look at and say, okay, got it. I know what's going on now. I've got this many
exactly,
actions, but I lost one because it's winter and I don't have Trondheim or something
exactly.
like that. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
And
great.
also the especially the downfall of the Reich, they bring like a small mini games. So you have to take Trondheim. This is a small, small. How do you say mini game? I say in Spanish, no? Or you have to go for London because if you take London, allies have one action less, or you have to go, I don't know, you have to go to Africa. So there are different fronts, and each front give you one different thing, as you mentioned. Yes, it's really good.
Right. And those mini games probably differ depending upon where you put your resources and what
Yeah,
technologies you've developed too. So if I want to get
exactly,
Trondheim, I probably want this technology, and I'm
exactly,
not going to be able to put as many troops on the Russian front right away. So I have to
exactly,
sacrifice here to get this technology, and then that's how I'm going to win Trondheim. But
exactly,
that might impact what you can do in North Africa or against the USSR, because it's that balancing those strategies and where you want to put it, and then how to play that mini game in Trondheim is its own little game in itself.
exactly.
Okay.
Imagine that you are German and you want to conquer Moscow and do a good Barbarossa. Okay, so then suggest you to develop the armor, the advanced armor technology, because armors are used to pocket. You say pocket.
Yes. Hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
to pocket.
Entrap, a pocket. Yep.
Okay, so you will need probably the Blitzkrieg, which already you have from the beginning of the game as a German. You have the advanced tank and the industry of tanks. So Soviet Union tanks, allies. Allies. If you want to disembark in France, technology you need is amphibious landing. But if you want to go, if you have Greece, you don't need amphibious landing technology. So, based on what you want to do, you have to develop one or another technology, and that's the
Mm,
key. The designer always tell me, Arthur, what are you going to do, and then select the technology.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
your opponent, after seeing your technology, can imagine what you are going to do.
Right. Okay. Got it. All right.
Yeah,
So if you're the allies and you see advanced armor, you think, oh, here comes Barbarossa. Right.
exactly.
Okay. Right. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been really fun for me to do. I've learned so much about the games, and your excitement and your enthusiasm for the game definitely shows through. Which is, I mean, I think that's what about one of the big things I like with games is games make people happy. We just live in such a great time that we can play all these marvelous games. So your passion for what you're doing shines through, and just for people watching, I just wanted to, this is for you. This is Saturday evening that you're doing this interview, so you're giving up your free time to spend the time
Oh
to talk
no,
about this. So thank you so much
even
for that.
even Saturday night, because I do like the games, and now I will play it now. So it's imagine that in the convention we did in Spain, one people played 7 games.
Oh wow.
They play 7 games or one of the 2 game of Downfall of Empires.
Oh
It's
wow.
and
Okay.
I said him, try the other. He said, no,
I'm
I
not done
want to
yet.
master a little bit this, and then I will. And we end the convention and haven't tried the other game. Only
Right.
7 games in 4 days. Only play with Downfall of Empires.
That's
So
yeah.
yes, it
Yeah.
was funny.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So this is fantastic. I think it's going to be a great introduction to the games for
Ve-
people in English
Very
speaking
good
countries.
stuff, Mike. Very good stuff.
Yes, likewise. Yeah, thank you. Great. I will.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Yes,
Thank you.
likewise. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All
Take
right. Bye
care.
bye. Yep.
Bye.
Likewise. Bye. Once again, thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Artur Zanón, the CEO of Do It Games. And thank you once again to Artur for donating his time on a Saturday evening from Barcelona to be with us. I think these games are pretty exciting, a lot to offer. I mean, the Kickstarter starts February 28th again. The idea of having a strategic simulation game with a lot of tactics and strategy involved that you can play in a single sitting for both World War I and, depending if you get the other game, World War II, Downfall of the Third Reich. There's a lot of appeal there. And in particular, I'm still working on a number of friends to kind of bring them into the flock of historical kind of conflict simulation games. And I think these games with their light rule set and again, that ability to play them in a single sitting is going to make it pretty appealing for them. I'm also very encouraged by the results of the play testing that was done at the recent wargaming conferences in Spain, where experienced wargamers are playing these games 5, 6, 7 times to try to explore different strategies and tactics. So I think it could be a relatively unique combination of newbie friendly game as well as offering a lot to experienced wargamers. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new, please consider subscribing. Again, feel free to drop questions down below in the comments. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Have a great day.